If I want to go back to the 7th century, the conflict was, according to the Islamic books, I don't know if it's accurate or not, and I don't know if Muhammad ever existed, but Muhammad represented himself as an alternative to the Jewish prophets, and he claimed to be the final prophet. So Islam is a replacement to Judaism. It's a replacement to Christianity. And this is, I think, the problem. If Islam recognized Christianity, Judaism as two legitimate religions, that they're still valid, then we wouldn't have a problem between the Muslims and the Jews to coexist in the same land. But fundamentally, the Muslims believe, and that's according to the Quran, to the Hadith, to the Islamic legislation, that prior to Muhammad, Judaism and Christianity were two legitimate religions. But the moment Muhammad was born, and the moment Muhammad became the prophet, the messenger of Allah, both religions became invalid. Hence, Muhammad replaced those two religions with Islam. So now, if you go to Jerusalem, Al-Aqsa Mosque sits on the top of the Jewish temple.
That's the reason why it was built there to begin.
So that's a replacement right now. So now the temple is canceled. It's illegitimate. And now the only legitimate house of worship is the mosque. So the actual conflict, and that's not only between what's so-called Palestinians, it's between the Muslim world of 2 billion people and the small religious minority of the Jewish people, is basically a religious war, at least from the Muslim side. And the attempts to annihilate the Jewish people did not begin after the British Mandate of Palestine. Prior to that, we have 400 years of Ottoman Empire, which basically cleansed the Jewish people from the land. And this is how the Jews end up scattered all over the globe. Prior to that, there were also many attempts. We can root it back to the 14th century, for the 7th century, when actually Muhammad cleansed the Jewish people from the Arab Peninsula.
Right.
Slaughtered.
But if the Jews weren't there today, then they would move on to the Christians, right?
Of course.
And they actually do in some of these countries.
Of course. This is the basis of my argument. And this is why I say it's very dangerous. Because if I personally to allow the Muslims in their delusion to annihilate one human race, this means that tomorrow they will go after the Christians. And after they go after the Christians, would go after the Hindus and after the Buddhists. So this is why today I say that the world must unify. Must unify not to fight against the Muslims. I don't want a global war. That's not what I'm asking for. But when the Muslims feel that the world is united, finally, that the world is aware of the Islamic ambition that's trying to dominate, create one global state. This is a Nazi ideology, a lot more dangerous than Nazi ideology, by the name of the divine and by the authority of the divine. Then the Muslims would never retreat. So many Westerners and many people, even in the East, buy in the lie that this conflict is over what's so-called Palestine. And we tell them, no, this is not what it is. And if we validate it, if we justify this process of ethnic cleansing that have started 1400 years ago, if they succeed of doing this, you validate the violence against every civilization, against every human being. And that's not the way of life. This is not the way of existence. We are all children of God. And the Muslims need to wake up from their delusion and accept that the Jews are the children of God. They're the legitimate children of God. The Christians as well. Everybody, every living being is a projection of the divine intelligence. So like for me to really look back and see that people really still living in this darkness and determined to erase a human race. This is insanity. This is madness.
The Arab communities in Judea and Samaria, where you call today the Palestinian Authority or in Gaza, have been radicalized notably in the past, let's say, 2 decades. The loss of indoctrination and lots of religious hatred towards the Jews. In Islam, the God of Islam, Allah himself, described the Jews in the worst possible ways. Muhammad did the same. And in the Islamic teachings, in the most trusted Islamic sources, it says that The end times will not come until the Muslims fight the Jews and eliminate them, every last one, until a Jew would hide behind a tree and the tree would shout out loud, Muslim servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him. So even the nature would conspire in such end time scenario against the Jews. So if this is now the teachings, and of course it was very strange some 40 years ago to hear such thing, people would laugh, and a huge part of it is Hamas continuous work and Hamas violence and the hateful propaganda, whether if it's from Hamas or the Palestinian Authority or any other Palestinian faction, hateful propaganda against Israel. Take, for example, the false accusations of ethnic cleansing, occupation, genocide. For example, when we were raised to believe that Palestine was a sovereign country, then it was occupied by the Jews without actually explaining any historic right to the Jewish people or even birthright. Because today, the entire Israeli society were born here. They have the birthright to be in this land. And now we were required to punish every Israeli, every Jew for the crime of being born in this land. It's absurdity. It's insane. And it's totally justified. Take, for example, the suicide bombing attacks. You know, when I was working very hard around the clock to catch a suicide bomber before they reach their target, the vast majority of the Palestinian society or the Arab society in general were celebrating the suicide bombing attacks. When you praise the suicide bomber, when you reward his family, when you expect from his family to celebrate, to tell them this is a wedding, this is not a funeral, then you keep pushing that agenda. Then the suicide bombing, as ugly as it is, it became the new norm. It became something praised and applauded by the vast majority of the society. Well, this was a very dangerous approach. And as you see, today, after 36 years of pushing such hateful agendas, violence, and justifying the violence by lame reasons like non-existential problems like the occupation, for example, what is the outcome? In a sexually repressed society, in a society where people don't actually know nothing about Judaism, they are not allowed to study the history of Zionism, they are not allowed to accept any Jewish narrative, denying all the facts, historic facts, denying the, let's say, the Bible, denying the Jewish connection, the archaeology, the artifacts, the Jewish temple, and clinging to a colonial entity, Palestine. Their script is completely flipped upside down, and they are not willing. And the moment you challenge any of their violence, or you challenge their theories or their narrative, you become immediately a traitor. If you try to stop the killing of innocent civilians, this is a crime, and you should be executed.
If you have a 401k or an IRA, please listen. Gold is at record highs. What many people don't know is this: you can move part of your retirement money legally and without tax penalties into physical gold you actually own. Alpha Omega Gold helps you do this through a gold IRA. Your gold is real. It is stored safely. It is in your name. Learn more at ao.gold/stand. Alpha Omega Gold is our sponsor, and they proudly stand with Israel.